Ontario sports fans, thank you so very much for checking out the Sportsline Podcast on the CHCH and Parrot Media platforms. I'm Bubba O'Neill. You know, we love our local athletes, teams, executives, even the officials and broadcasters, and the Sportsline Podcast has their stories to tell. Today, a Hamiltonian that basically grew up on the hardwood, and a couple of decades later, he's still there. Talk about a local lad doing well. In a time where the city of Hamilton has now produced an NBA MVP, there have been many young women and men who've assisted in building the sport of basketball in these parts. Teresa Burns, Lisa Tomidas, Ron Foxcroft, Joe Raso, Ken Murray, just to name a few. Yet, few have had the career of Victor Raso, who's risen from the secondary school level to the pro ranks of the sport and has now been fortunate to do so, really, overall, in the same area code. So we're so fortunate to have Victor Raso in the house, the head coach and general manager of the Niagara River Lions, and it's great to have you in.
Yeah, thanks for having me in. It's crazy to hear you introduce me with those names that you mentioned there. It's quite an honor.
Well, you belong right there. And as we talk about names, you are a basketball guy, so I got to throw this to you because you specialize in the sports and you've seen it in all angles. When I say Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Hamilton athlete, NBA MVP, does it all compute?
It's starting to a little bit, but not really. I mean, I didn't get a chance to play with Shai. He's much younger than me. I didn't really know him very well either, but just to say that the best, if not one of the best Hamilton or players in the world are from Hamilton it's just mind-boggling, honestly. And he has just gotten so darn good at basketball. I'm proud watching him, and I root for him all the time.
I think that's the attitude that I'm getting from a lot of Hamiltonians in terms of sports. As I said, when I dig into it, though, there's so much behind it. I mean, yes, the athlete is there, but the athlete needs to be honed in. And you've gone through that high school program and sort of the junior programs here that we have in Hamilton. It's a credit to them, too, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, there's really good coaching in the city. There's really good development, and there's people who care a lot about pouring their time and effort into young kids who are invested into the sport. And I know Shai played for really good programs and had people who cared about him. And when you combine that with the talent and determination that a young man has, we produce great athletes in this city, and it's great that Shai's kind of put us on the map, so to speak.
Let's do an advertisement for one Mike Morreale. CEBL, 7 seasons. You're a champion. But let's talk about this league. Anytime there's a startup league in any sport, especially in Canada, it's touch and go.
Absolutely.
We've seen, I think, overall more failures than successes. The CEBL, the Canadian Elite Basketball League, it's no joke. This is growing. It's real, national TV, and you're a part of it. You got to just love it.
Yeah, I do. I'm thankful all the time that, 7 years ago, I kind of made the jump to do it. And at that point I was 27, and it wasn't as risky for a young guy like me to kind of devote yourself to something that historically has failed. But I just kind of believed in where they were going. I believed in the vision of the league. Mike, right from the start, you could just tell that this is a guy who's going to take this league to places that no Canadian basketball league has before. And it's just every year, step by step, they've made the right moves. They do a great job on social media. They do a great job taking care of players and coaches. The venues that we play in are top notch. Just the entertainment value, the standard across the league is really, really good. And it's slowly becoming the CFL of basketball. And, now 7 years in, this is the best summer league in the world.
What's it like when you're going to, the Meridian Center is a great barn to watch any sport, quite honestly. But when you go on the road in other places like Montreal and Ottawa and Calgary, and I can go on and on, what's it like when you see the flair and the love of basketball being enjoyed in these other centers?
It's just it's like a big time feeling, It's like, when we go to play in Winnipeg or play in Ottawa or Montreal, those gyms are packed. They're all unique stadiums, and their fans are passionate. It's hard to win on the road in the CBL, and you could just see that the country has been primed for something like this, and these big cities are now fully have adapted that they are basketball cities, and there are loyal fans who go to the games. There are people who are asking us questions, booing us on the road. Like it's real, and it's awesome.
They say timing is everything, and I think when I grew up in the high school playing high school sports, and maybe when you did as well too, the feeling was hockey first. I don't know if that's the case anymore.
I'm not sure we've passed hockey, but we definitely have a serious love for basketball in this country. You know, even from the time that I was a kid till now, you could just see it. There are lots of kids playing basketball. You know, there's people playing basketball all over the place. We have such a diverse country. Basketball is a very accessible sport. You know, you don't need much to play basketball, and we've fallen in love with it. And the Raptors have done, you know, from the Vince Carter effect to them winning the championship, it's just kind of changed everything about the sport in this country, and people love it. And, you know, we are here at the right time for that.
I think there's a cultural aspect to it as well too, maybe.
Absolutely. There definitely is, yeah.
Right, I feel so. Let's talk about the Niagara River Lions, and you've been at it for a little bit, even going back to before it was in the CEBL. You've been knocking on the door, and I mean, you can get into this, but last year you were a champion. What was that like?
I mean, it was great. It was validation. You know, I was an assistant for the River Lions when we existed in the last year of the NBL Canada, and then, you know, been the head coach and GM since we moved into this league, and we've been good every single year. And, you know, for the last 4 or 5 years, every year there's been a Final Four. We've made it there. We had won the regular season 2 or 3 times. We never finished lower than second in the regular season, and we just had some unfortunate failures down the stretch. And for us, reevaluating for me really every single year, was our process good or was our process bad? And there were years where we got to the semifinal and lost, and I didn't like how we did things. But the last few years we had been getting there and losing. In one year we made it to the championship, and it was just like, we're doing things right, and we just need to kind of stick with the process, make some, you know, minor personnel tweaks, and, you know, me grow up as a coach too, and be able to handle those moments better and prepare for them all year long. And last year was just that. It was just validation that our organization does a great job, that we have been doing a good job on the basketball floor, and we just needed to be stamped as champions and not as, you know, the regular season darlings who can't really get it done at the end. So, you know, that was a massive moment. That was a massive moment for me and the organization. And yeah, it was really just validation for us.
Well, and you're right, because there are a number of organizations, and we can talk about this in any sport, that continually are knocking on the door and they don't get there. I mean, there's one that wears blue and white down the road that, you know, that of course is one of the most covered teams in all of sport in this country. But I mean, honestly, when you get that kind of success and failure, there are some times you don't make it. I mean, did you ever think about, you know what, I don't know, maybe this isn't for me, or I'm going to move on?
Yeah, lots of times. This job, especially being the GM as well, it makes you want to quit a lot. And, you know, you'll have moments through the year where, you know, you lose or you're not playing well, and it's like, why do I put myself through this? Obviously those are counteracted by the joys of playing really well and winning. But I just feel like this is kind of my calling. This is what, you know, I'm grateful to be, you know, this young still and coaching and getting this experience in the professional world, that it's worth the highs and lows. It's worth the sleepless nights and difficult conversations. I just have learned to kind of do it within my personality and make sure that I'm above all as transparent and honest with, you know, the players as possible. And, you know, therefore we're able to have a group of guys who will constantly play hard and together every year, and usually that translates to success.
You've had like some amazing players on your roster, and can still continue to do as you look to defend your title, and one that came back that's a really special player in Khalil Ahmad. But when you've got to make those tough decisions and say you're going to be no longer part of our program, I mean, it's always great when you make the signings. How tough is it when you have to make that call and say, I mean, I could think of the Tiger Cats just recently making cuts. Yeah. How tough is that for the general manager?
It's really difficult. And I've, you know, 7 years into this now, I've had to do it a lot of times. And what I've kind of learned is to do, just like anything, the pre-work I do beforehand in the recruiting process, in our role meetings, and, you know, what guys should expect and what I'm expecting from them, the more I do up front, I don't want to say the easier it is, but the more well received it is. I have to be transparent. I can't sleep at night if I'm not telling guys the truth, or I'm hiding things from people, which is, I've learned to have those smaller, difficult conversations along the way, so that if it ever gets to the point where I have to release somebody, that, it's not coming out of nowhere. They've been given expectations. They know what needed to be done. They needed to do on a daily basis. They could probably see that it wasn't necessarily happening. And then sometimes guys are just victims of circumstance. That's when it's really hard, is when, it really has nothing to do with them. Maybe it's that a Canadian went down, or for some reason couldn't fulfill their contract, and now I have to adjust how we've used our Americans, because similar to the CFL, we have American import rules, and we have on the court rules as well. So when those kind of situations come up, it's tougher, but those conversations will never be easy. But as a leader, you've got to have the conversations, and you've got to do it.
I'll ask you this question because I can think back to a young Victor Raso. You remember Steve Foxcroft and myself calling these high school games in Hamilton and Burlington, and watching the sport grow. And I do remember a young Victor Raso playing at the secondary high school level. Can I ask you why basketball for you?
Well, I guess like lots of people, you kind of grow up in an environment, and you kind of do what your parents did. And I grew up around basketball, and I loved it from an early age. And I got my passion definitely from my dad, and how, passionate he was as a coach, and how much he cared about the game. And that's kind of really been it for me. It was my goal to always win a national championship in university, even from when I was way too young to realistically be having that goal. And I just chased it. And then I kind of realized by the end of my university career, I'm not going to the NBA, and I really don't want to try to play overseas. Like, I know where my limitations lie, but my love for the game and all that work put into it just gave me the understanding that coaching was where I actually, I do think I had a talent more so than on the basketball floor, just because of the way I always had to learn the game, being a less athletic player. So it was just like, that's the road I'm going to take. I'm going to go down here. If I could choose which sport I got to coach, I'd probably choose football. I'm not a good football coach,
wow. Okay.
But like I really love football. I'll watch football as a fan, and just watch any team play the game. I'll watch CFL just to watch the sport being played. I don't necessarily do that with basketball anymore because it's my job and I'm doing it all the time. But yeah, that's kind of how I made this decision.
It really is an amazing journey. I mean, where you came from in Hamilton, and then playing for Mac, the high school guy playing for Mac, and then you go up and you're with Dave. I got to ask you about Dave Smart. Actually, what kind of influence he had on you?
Oh, massive. Yeah. I mean, I played for Dave for 2 years, and then I was an assistant coach there when Dave was on sabbatical but still around, and he's still a mentor of mine. We speak on the phone quite often. He still coaches me essentially from afar, but that is one of the best basketball coaches in the world. And to go through a season or a few seasons of playing for Dave Smart at Carleton, especially during his tenure at time, you learn a lot about yourself. You definitely learn a lot about basketball, but more so you learn about how to be a great teammate, how to actually care about people, how to deal with accountability, how to show up every day. And he's had a profound impact on my life.
If you had a ring to put on Dave Smart's hand in terms of OUA championships, and even you're getting close to national championships, you'd have to fill up your hand and your toes, I would think, as well too.
Yeah.
It's amazing the success he's had.
I mean, for him, they didn't even give out rings for OUA championships there. In fact, it was never a happy locker room after OUA championships. It just was never the goal, so it was always
that's probably it.
National championships. And yeah, I think he's got 16 of them. So
oh, it's incredible. You talk about that decision to coach, and as I do, I remember you as a player, and again watching you at the university level, and I always thought you were a bit of a technical player, a tactician, and you could really understand why this guy plays the game. You knew the fundamentals. You played that way. As you talk about that decision to become a coach, I would tell you this. In most times, I think in professional sports, sometimes someone that played the game are the worst coaches. Look at Wayne Gretzky, the greatest player that we've seen in our time, was a horrible coach. What made you think you could be a good coach?
I think guys who are really, really good at the sport have a tough time being really good coaches, because there's almost an art form to being that excellent at any sport. But for me, I was always a role player. I had to know the entirety of the game. I had to understand my role, 1 of 5. I had to question coaches' schemes, so I understood. I was just never athletic enough to go out there and just dominate a game by myself. I needed my team to be organized so that I could play, really. So that's why I was quite comfortable with it. And in my last year, or when I went to Carleton, I told Dave that I wanted to be a coach after. He said that that's fine, but by the time you graduate, the players on the team who you'll be coaching the next year, they need to clearly see you as a coach and not as just a player who is their friend. So I started to really think about that my last year, and then for me it was seamless. But I do understand why guys who are really, really good struggle, because they could just take over. Their mind sees things differently. Athletically, you can just solve problems where coaches can't physically solve any problems. It's all about how you communicate and how you have your schemes and adjustments and stuff like that. So that's probably why I felt like I could do it.
There's so many in that category. I think of a Patrick Ewing in basketball, and you got the gig at Georgetown, but I don't know, they thought he'd turn around the program. And I mean, a guy that went to Georgetown and just wasn't that good. I think in baseball, and the best managers are the ones who are the catchers, not the hitters or the sluggers or the guy who had 500 home runs. It's amazing to me, that translation to get to that next level. And I think that's a real interesting point that you brought up, is the fact that there's a point somewhere in your coaching career where you can't be everyone's buddy. And that's got to be difficult.
Yeah, it is. But I knew that right off the start, especially as a 27-year-old coaching pros. It wasn't until I think I was 32 or 33 that I wasn't, that there wasn't a player on the team who was older than me. So I knew from the start that I had to make that distinction very clear. I get along with my players really well. We relate on a whole bunch of things, especially now as a young father. I've got lots of young fathers on my team, so we relate to each other on that level, but I'm not their friends. I don't really want to cross that line ever. And that's, so they respect me as a coach and I respect them as a player. But it has been difficult because I'm the same age as lots of them.
You're coaching professionals, but as we saw on your sort of resume that we had at the top there, Ridley College is actually another element of your coaching career where, again, now you're coaching pros and you're coaching, I guess, adolescents at the teenage years. Can you talk to me about what's going on at Ridley College?
Yeah, so I got hired at Ridley a couple years ago to be the head coach of their prep basketball team and also the director of basketball for the school. And that has been an unbelievable 2 years. I love that so much. And I'm spending, my entire day is coaching, some of the top basketball players in this country. And Ridley College is just a hidden gem in St. Catharines. It's one of the best boarding schools in the world. It's a top private school in Canada, and we are attracting high-level student athletes to the school who are incredibly disciplined and dedicated to the sport. And the fun part about that is I get to mold them. When I'm dealing with the River Lions in the summer, these are guys who have been through prep schools and universities. They are molded humans who are now playing basketball to make money. While these guys they're just full of energy and they want to be molded. They want to learn the game. They want to learn to be great teammates. And it's been awesome. In 2 years there, we've turned the program around. We won the OSBA championship this year, and our student athletes are just getting better. You can see that the model of development is good. It's been really fulfilling.
Because I think that's a great word that I always think about when I hear of programs like yourself, is the program. It's not just 1 year. It's not just one student. There's a whole program to be built.
Absolutely. And at Ridley, I really don't care about winning and losing. Although we talk about impacting winning, that's like the top of the pyramid for us. It's not really about that. It's about, making sure that I have students who are with our program for 2 or 3 years at a time. We are not trying to cherry pick the best talent in the country. I just want to develop classes, so that these guys have the opportunity to fully buy into a program, because that's what really develops kids, is when they understand, how to prepare to be on the court for an hour and a half every day and, do your work in the classroom and strength and conditioning, and then be held to high standards all the time. And when you go through that for long enough, you have bad moments, and then you start to figure out who you are on your worst day, and you can kind of build from there. And that's the value of programs. And when you get to university, that's what makes people really good at the college level, is that they're able to be one of many. They have that baseline accountability and discipline, and they have a structure in mind that they've already been taught the game one time. Now they're just changing their structure or their framework of the game to meet the next coach's framework. And that's the big thing for me, is making sure that when our guys leave Ridley College, they're physically developed, their skills have developed, but also their understanding of how to compete, how to be one of many, is at a level that will impact winning when they go to their next school.
They got to be coachable. Like they got to be coachable.
Because the difference for me is that I tell these guys all the time, the job for me at Ridley is not, I'm not getting hired or fired based off of winning, but your next coach is. So if I don't prepare you to impact winning in all ways, when you get to Division I, that coach is on a 1 to 3 year contract likely. And if you don't impact winning right off the bat, they don't have time for you to sit around. They're just going to replace you. And that's what I feel like I've got to give to the guys.
Even if you're Tom Thibodeau and you win, you get whacked.
I know, right?
Crazy. Pro sports. When you look at those kids, do you sometimes see yourself?
I see them. They're way better than me. And I wish I worked as hard as those guys. I always thought I worked hard, but I'm so impressed by the amount of sheer effort that they put into training for the game. It's really impressive, and I think that's kind of an under talked about thing with, especially I've noticed with youth basketball players, is that there is no willingness to, or no, it's no lack of willingness to work hard. Like these guys will get up in the morning to lift and shoot and still practice with intensity in the evening and want to do it again the next day. It's quite impressive.
I hear that in every sport now, that these young kids right now are so much, they're better athletes, whatever. And I'm talking about the greats of the game, all saying that when they compare, as you just did, like, is it they want money, they want to be pro, they like the life? What do you think is the difference? Is it the opportunity to get to the next level? What, I mean, I'm answering my own question. I don't know, but from your standpoint, what do you see?
Well, the opportunity is definitely achievable, or it seems more achievable now than it kind of used to, but just the visibility, which is probably to do with social media in some aspect, like the visibility of what it takes is also out there. Like our young players are going on Instagram all the time, and on one hand they see highlights and all that stuff, which actually can hurt them, but on the other hand they do see how hard some guys work, and that has translated into guys wanting to be in the gym. Like there's a culture in basketball now of having a trainer who's not your coach. And while, again, there can be a downside to that, the upside is that everyone feels like they need to be training one-on-one on top of practices and strength and conditioning and all that. And those are things that when I was a young kid, it just didn't happen very often. There were a handful of people in the city who would train, and they were usually doing it for free back in the day. It was drop-ins in the summer. Now it's like there's a whole industry of that, and guys who aren't doing that feel like they're getting passed over. So there's just a ton of it just kind of feels like the pathway. You need to be working out all the time and working on your skills to get to Division I levels. Well,
you think of Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, that when he comes home, and he's one of those guys that does come back home to Hamilton every year, and now you will be, obviously, he lives here as well, too. His workout guy isn't up in the mountain, and his equipment is in a garage. And that's where he does all his hard work in the off season. And it does amaze me that the work habits of athletes nowadays, compared to to many generations ago, where you started training a month before the season started to get yourself back into shape.
Right.
Now, as you said, it's 24/7. I like to play this game every once in a while called Picture Time. And I'll just throw up a picture, and I'd love you to respond, or you can tell me what was going on, or whatever the case is. So let's see our picture number one, guys. What does this mean to you?
Oh, man, that's the last game of real basketball I ever played. That's just pure happiness right there. That is pure happiness, knowing like not everybody gets to win the championship the last time they ever play basketball, and those were the guys that I was closest to, and yeah, that's cool.
That's Carleton, I guess. What era? What year do you think?
That is 2014-15, my last year playing, and that was at the Mattamy Athletic Center in Toronto.
Oh, really? So it was relatively local as well, too.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, those are special days, I'm sure, for you. Let's see our next one, guys.
Oh, that's cool. This wasn't too long ago. That's my wife, Kritzi, and I at City Hall in St. Catharines, and I was accepting the 2024 St. Catharines Sports Person of the Year award, which was an absolute shock to me. I just never... It wasn't even on the bucket list because I just feel like sports person of the year in my mind are people who've had long, legendary careers. But we had a heck of a year last year, and with Niagara, and to win the championship, that was more like me accepting the award on behalf of the organization and everything that we've done, and they're showing us that they were proud of our achievement.
And I think, just looking at that picture, and just when I look at it too, I see your wife there as well too, and someone that probably sees you at your highs and your very lows as well too. So to share that with her must have been amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't get to do any of this without her. We have 2 young kids at home, and coaching basketball full time is not the easiest on your family. So yeah, it was great that she could be there with me that day, and that photo, we just look so happy. So it's awesome.
Speaking of family.
Uh-oh. That's the beginning of the River Lions journey. That's when my dad got announced as the head coach way back in the day. I had just gotten home from Carleton and was working full time at Meridian in St. Catharines. It was the first time that my dad coached after his coaching career at Mac, and I was just a young, eager assistant coach wanting to get into the coaching world really bad. And it's funny to look back on that. It was pretty much a blank slate, and to see kind of where the River Lions have gone, where both my dad and I have gone since then. That's cool. That's cool.
He was a guy that in my early years was considered, I guess because of the time at Mac, and then there was some stuff where he was doing some stuff for Basketball Canada. At least in our area, he was kind of like the basketball aficionado. Like, he just really was. And you could tell, again, as I talk about these people that have this love for basketball, it was clear and evident with him. And I can understand why you would follow in his footsteps in a sense. And I know you're your own guy as well, too. But yes, there was a pathway, or I guess something for you to compare to. Is that the way I could look at it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think his pathway was a little bit different than mine, but the passion was there.
Right.
And I got to like learn the in and outs of a full-time coaching lifestyle, and therefore I kind of knew what I was getting myself into by going into this world. But my dad was a fiery competitor, who always, him and other coaches were cordial, but they would compete pretty hard. That was kind of the way my dad was. And then in this second kind of stage of his career, he has become that. Like, his passion for the game is overwhelming. He has become a connector of coaches, and kind of like a grandfather of basketball in this region, where he's not competing within it anymore. He's just trying to help the sport as much as possible. And now he does analyst work. And his legacy is now that he's just a basketball lifer who wants the sport to be the best it can be in this country.
I always wonder about what his mindset is, and I'm sure he's as professional as ever, because I have seen and listened to enough games where the Niagara River Lions are on TSN, and he's on the broadcast as the color commentator, and here he is sort of grading the performance of your team and the head coach as well too. I don't know, has there ever been any issues where you might have called him out a couple of times?
Me and him, we really don't get into the nitty gritty too much, because we can't. Like, we see some things differently, and that's his thing, calling the games, and my thing is coaching. So, before games that he's calling, he'll ask me what my keys are and what our scouting report looks like and stuff like that. But I really just kind of let him be in his world and me in mine. And when I'm listening to him call the games, he never mentions my name. He really doesn't talk much about me at all. And there was one clip at the end when we won the CEBL championship that he mentioned something about being proud for me. But for the most part, we keep those worlds kind of separate.
Probably the best way to do it as well, too. I mean, it can't be too many family scraps during Thanksgiving. Hey, this has been amazing to capture your journey, see the things that you have gone through, the things that really, for you, the path and whatever experiences, they're still out there for you. I would think, like your dad, that basketball will be in your life forever.
Yeah, I think so too. And I hope so, because I'm quite privileged and lucky to be doing what I'm doing right now.
But we're glad to have you on the Sportsline Podcast to get a little sneak peek of how it all started and where you are right now, and hopefully so much success is coming your way in the future.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Bubs.
Thanks for joining us on the Sportsline Podcast. That's your Sportsline Podcast for the day. And yes, we love talking sports. If you do know of an athlete, team, or event that deserves a spotlight, we do want to hear from you. Please hit that thumbs up, like, and share button. And be sure to subscribe, because you'll always get the latest. And of course, as you just saw, the greatest edition. The talented people that make the Sportsline Podcast possible. We always appreciate you. And we'll see you tomorrow.